Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Moving Markets Podcast. It is Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. Market's going to open. You'll hear that opening bell in about 5 seconds here. Um, if you were paying attention to watching futures at all this morning, there's the opening bell. Obviously, you saw the same thing that I saw, and that is that futures were mostly pointing up, not so much on the Nasdaq as on the S&P 500 and the Dow. But when the PCE numbers broke, and we mentioned it earlier in this week that people were going to be watching and paying attention to these PCE numbers and kind of zeroing in on this. And when those numbers broke, it immediately sent the markets down. The Dow futures had been up 120 points, and within a few minutes of that report, Dow futures were down to flat or ever so slightly negative. And then for the remainder of the pre-market, for that last half an hour or so before the markets actually opened, it remained relatively flat. Now everything is down right now. You've got the Dow down 65, S&P down 10, Nasdaq down 38. None of those even reaches 0.2%. And these numbers might be a tiny bit behind in terms of the delay on them, but I'm seeing that to be pretty consistent with what my live streaming information is that I always have on a different screen next to me. So, this is a very, very slight market movement. I mean, imagine if we got to the end of the day and nothing was worse than it is right now, you would walk away and say that was a really, really flat day. That's what you would feel like, is that it's just a really flat day in the stock market. Um, you've got the PCE report. I don't know if you were watching this or not. Um, I don't know if that's the greatest screen view. Let me show it right here. I know this is small on your screen, but you know, uh, personal income actually rose a little bit over the consensus. That was a little bit of good news. But the inflation numbers, the month over month was 0.2% instead of one, 3.7% instead of the 3.6 expected for the year over year. And then the core numbers were exactly in line with what was expected. Obviously, I think, you don't have to be a genius. I'm no genius. The markets would have reacted incredibly positive had these been really unexpected good numbers. Like if personal income was up even higher, if core prices, instead of a 0.1% miss right here, if this number would have been, 3.2 or 2.9 or something that was a really good beat on those numbers, that would have created an incredibly positive market reaction. But I think it's the fact that these numbers weren't very far off. It means that as far as the expectation of interest rate increases or interest rate cuts, it essentially did not move the needle. And that's kind of the story this morning. And that's why you've got, the three major indexes that we follow. They're all down, but you could almost make the argument that they're all relatively flat. This is not a big move on any of these by any stretch. Now, the day is very young. We are a few minutes into trading, and anything could happen. There is some big news going on the periphery of this, and that is that Meta decided to settle on one of these lawsuits going on. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's a really big thing for Meta, because if they lost like they did, I think it was New Mexico, they lost a case and had a pretty big judgment against them. If they were to have lost again, that could have been a much more staggering number than what they settled for. I think I saw a number of 16 billion. Um, Oh, there. Okay, I was off a little tiny bit. 16 is some change. 17 billion, if you can read that right there. That's a big deal to have that settled and over and done with. And as a result, Meta stock, I think just because of the relief that this creates within its investors, Meta was having a nice move to the upside in spite of the rest of the market being quite a bit down. Um, so the PCE numbers are now behind us. The markets may continue to react a little bit to those numbers as the day moves forward and as we go on. But I don't think you're going to get a great big reaction beyond what you're already seeing. In fact, because oil is down this morning and inching back down towards the 70s, getting back, possibly getting back below $80 a barrel for West Texas. That may be having a little bit of a counter effect on the PCE numbers. So all in all, I'm looking across the open positions that I have right now. I've got Amazon barely down a fraction, 21 cents, which is less than a tenth of a percent. CrowdStrike down a little bit, where that's a non-directional trade. I don't care what CrowdStrike is doing. Google getting hit a little bit today after getting so close. If you look at the chart on Google, yeah, so close to giving us a technical crossover and then pulling back just a little bit today. We'll see whether that continues or whether they find some upward momentum again. I am fearful that Google sticks in this range for another 2 weeks. They've been a solid 2.5 weeks in that very tight range right there. I don't want to see them get stuck there. I'd like to see them going up, or if they're going to go down, break the 340 mark and give us a chance to buy back into Google at 280. I mean, do something. Don't just get stuck there in neutral. I'd rather see it go down to 280 and the buying opportunity that may create than to just get stagnant and stuck. My first preference would be to see it going up, but that one's down a little bit more than some of the others. JPMorgan hardly moving at all. Nvidia has been up a little bit today. Now it's down a little bit today. Um, Red Cat is flat, moving 1 penny. And then SanDisk started the day almost $30 to the downside. So now actually in positive territory, up about $3.50, $4 a share. So that's what you've got going on with some of the companies that we're trading. Of course, I mentioned this yesterday. I'll mention it again today. All eyes on Nvidia at the close of the market today. I find myself I don't necessarily go out of my way to try and be a contrarian, but neither do I want to be a conformist. I would like to consider myself just very much a realist. But I find myself in the camp of many people that I hear saying, no matter what numbers Nvidia reports today, it's almost like it's a foregone, and this is sad to me. I don't think that it should be this way. It's almost like it's a foregone conclusion that there's nothing, literally nothing Nvidia could do or say, or no number that they could report that will be good enough to satisfy the investment community. And that I don't think that speaks highly of the average intelligence of the people managing big chunks of money, the people that are running big hedge funds, big mutual funds, huge amounts of money. I don't think it speaks well of their collective intelligence when Nvidia will probably once again have absolute blowout numbers, have an amazing guidance report, and just literally hit everything that you would expect it to hit. And yet I think there is a high likelihood, 75, 80% or greater chance that Nvidia will trade down after their numbers. Now, aftermarket, anything could happen. You could see it spike to the upside when the numbers are released, and then you could see it drop way down later on, or vice versa. It could go either direction. I heard Lou Basinace is someone who I enjoy listening to him because I think he has a fairly common sense approach. I think his corporation does good research. So when he talks about what a company might or might not do, I pay attention. I don't always agree, but I pay attention. But Lou Basinace was saying yesterday, I think, that if in Nvidia, I think their expectation, I think what the Wall Street is looking for is something in the way of forgive me if I'm off on these numbers, but I think I saw 60 billion in revenue for the previous quarter. And that's like almost double what what it did before. Um, but then the other thing that he said is they're expected to guide. And forgive me if I'm off on these numbers. Use these numbers more as a just an example if I'm off on the exact numbers. But I think he said they're expected to guide around 70 billion for the next quarter. And then he said, but if they don't guide around 100 billion, everyone's going to be disappointed. And I thought, how sad a commentary is that a company that is that big and doing that well, and they're like their own printing press for money. It's like they have found a legal printing press for money. And how sad it is to me that they might strike those numbers. They might just have a blowout impressive quarter and still end up trading to the downside. So we'll see what happens. Now, if their numbers are really, really, really good and they sell off a little bit, they may not drag the rest of the chip makers down with them, which is a funny contrast because a lot of people are worried that if they come in with poor numbers or just not, they don't impress, they're not going to come in with poor numbers, but if they don't impress enough, that it could be a drag on the whole market. But I would argue that they could have some really, really good numbers. People who have already decided they're going to sell them, because I think there are a lot of people that have already decided they're going to sell Nvidia. Um, but it may not have that drag on the rest of the market that you might otherwise expect it to have. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun to talk about tomorrow. They're not the only ones reporting. You've got, if we go to our calendar here, after the close. You've also got the report coming today on CrowdStrike and CRM after the bell. And these are not exactly small companies. These are also companies that could really, really move the needle. I think they're gonna tell a similar story to Nvidia. I think they're gonna report good numbers. I think they're going to beat expectations, and I kind of expect them to beat expectations on top and bottom line. And then I think they're going to get that they think there's a chance they're going to get hit and sell off a little bit. I just think that's kind of the mode too many people are in right now, and kind of where things are leaning. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be, I think, I don't think I need to go on and on this morning. I think I'm going to wrap up right there. But I think it's going to make for a really fun morning tomorrow to talk about what is actually happening. I think we're very well positioned with CrowdStrike and Nvidia. I sent out on Triple Play an attempt to get into a trade on Snowflake this morning, but I noticed that right when the market opened, the mid price on Snowflake jumped way outside of the range that we want it to be in. I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave the trade in place. Snowflake reports next week on Wednesday after the bell. And so Thursday and Friday they could trade. And a long iron condor, I think, could really profit. We'll have more time this week and early next week to get into something on them if we still want to. But I'm going to leave that order in place that I put in and see what will happen with it. Try and get in. One other quick thing of note: I mentioned yesterday on Discord that the new JPMorgan trade that we just opened up on Monday or on Tuesday morning, mine was showing yesterday for a little while that it was up 15, 16%. I could not get an order to fill. I was really upset about that because the mid price was well above what I was trying to exit at, and it was kind of ticking me off. I showed JP Morgan still up right now, close to 10%. It was sitting at 9.9 a couple seconds ago, and now it's sitting at 6.99. But if JP Morgan, if I can exit that trade within a couple of days of having opened it for 12 to 15%. I mean, don't wait for me to say that you should pull the trigger on that. That's a no-brainer. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I don't mean to say that if someone doesn't do that, they don't have a brain, although that's the implication of that comment. I just mean that it's a no-brainer. Just take it for what it is. If you have a chance to get out of that trade with 12 to 15% and you've only been in it a couple of days, take the win. It's just such an obvious thing to me. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, but before I do, check it out. The Dow has turned positive, the S&P has turned positive, and barely by less than one full point. The NASDAQ has now turned positive. I'm not surprised by any of that, considering those PCE numbers were really, I would say, off a fraction, but fairly in line. And we're getting to the end of August, which is traditionally one of the worst months in the market. People are starting to reposition now and looking to buy back in, the people specifically who have maybe sat out the summer. So I'm not shocked that there's been a little bit of a turnaround. I don't know if it will last through the day, but we'll see. All right, I'm going to wrap up right there. I'll be active on Discord all throughout the day today and can't wait to get back online tomorrow morning after we actually have those Nvidia numbers. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.